Hey everyone, just wanted to give a really quick update before I start the video. I want to apologize in advance if this video goes out a little bit later or if some of my other videos end up going out a little bit later. Without getting into too many details, I've been kind of sick over the last few days with some really bad stomach pain. I believe it might be a Crohn's disease flare-up, and that pain has kind of taken away some of my motivation to do a lot of things, so if my output slows down, I apologize in advance. I'll definitely try my best to keep putting out videos for you guys, but again, if I struggle to, I'm sorry. Regardless, let's get into the proper video right now. Welcome back to another multi-album review, and as you can tell from the title, these are the two albums that I'm going to be covering today. We have the new Olivia Rodrigo album, Sour, as well as the new 21 Pilots album, Scaled and Icy. Originally, I was expecting that I was only going to be reviewing 21 Pilots' new album. I had mentioned that in last week's video that I was going to be doing a review of it, but then I got a bit of a surprise when Olivia Rodrigo released her album. I wasn't totally expecting it, but now it's here, so let's make this a multi-album review. And now that I've blabbered on long enough that I hopefully got a thumbnail out of these, let's just jump right in. First off, let's start with the new Olivia Rodrigo album, Sour. Olivia Rodrigo is a singer, songwriter, and actress from California who first rose to prominence thanks to her roles on several Disney series, including Bizaardvark and High School Musical, the series. Jesus, that's a long-winded title. Those shows got her plenty of popularity, and she has been able to buoy that success into a music career, which has gotten her even more insane mainstream success that I imagine might have even surprised her. Her debut single, Driver's License, hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and has been one of the biggest songs of the year, and now her new single, Deja Vu, even reached the top 10 on the charts. Personally, I didn't really fall in love with Driver's License when I first heard it, so I didn't really have Olivia on my radar, but I respect that at 18 she's already had some gigantic success under her belt and she already has an album to her name. Initially, I was a little worried going into this album because given how quick it's releasing in proximity to those singles, I feared that this was going to reek of label manipulation, and that it was going to feel like her label rushing out an album to capitalize on such a huge single. The record being just 11 tracks and 34 minutes also added to that worry. As it turns out, I had nothing to fear. Olivia proves herself on what I think is a pretty fantastic debut. It was very unexpected seeing this album kick off with a track like Brutal. With her trend of ballad-driven singles, I wasn't expecting Olivia to come through with a full-blown rock anthem, but that she did. It's hard-hitting, the writing is perfectly relatable for a Gen Z crowd, and it really hooks you in. She also keeps in that rock-leaning direction with a track like Good For You, which is an insane showcase of her vocal power over top of an instrumental line with these catchy, somewhat sunny guitar riffs. I also like the more groovy feel of a track like Jealousy, Jealousy, which leans on this more potent bass groove as Olivia discusses the feeling of comparisons. She talks about how women, especially young women, have so many unrealistic standards placed on them and how social media can lead to a lot of self-shaming, as so many women are compared to each other. It makes a bold, excellent statement, and the combination of the heavy drum beat and Olivia's haunting vocals makes it such an excellent cut. Much of the record does move back into that ballady direction, not surprising, this is a breakup album, but Olivia keeps things consistent with tracks like Traitor, One Step Forward, Three Steps Back, Enough For You, and Favorite Crime, all of which work thanks largely to their very delicate instrumentals, brutal honesty in terms of lyricism, and the charisma that Olivia has on her vocals. To me, Olivia Rodrigo is the perfect example of an artist who kind of wears her influences on her sleeve but doesn't sound like she's biting the style of any of them. Throughout the album, I did get some vibes of artists like Taylor Swift, Lorde, Billie Eilish, and Avril Lavigne, but it never felt like Olivia was the next of any of those artists, and it never felt like she was trying to make one of their songs. It felt like she took a lot of what made their songs great while adding her own unique flavor to keep them interesting. Even on a track like Happier, which initially reminded me of River of Tears by Alessia Cara, I thought Olivia was able to make it feel like her own, and her honest, poignant writing made it a track worth returning to. I also have to say that Driver's License did actually grow on me when I heard it with the rest of the album. Initially, I didn't think of it as much more than a pretty standard pop song, but this track has too damn catchy of a chorus for me to ignore. Same thing goes for Deja Vu. These are just some of the tracks that really show Olivia's knack for building super catchy hooks. Perhaps the biggest high point for me personally was the closing track, Hope You're Okay, which beyond being another beautiful, minimal type of song, stands tall thanks to its stunning writing. Olivia basically talks about people that she used to know that she hasn't seen since her youth, and reminds them that she's proud of them and wishes them well. On the surface, the concept of a song reminiscing about old friends might not seem totally unique, but I really connected to it because of the allusions Olivia makes to these friends being LGBTQ and the hardships that they faced because of it. There are so many standout lyrics, but I really love the moments where she said, his parents cared more about the Bible than being good to their own child. He wore long sleeves because of his dad. And her parents hated who she loved. She couldn't wait to go to college. She was tired because she was brought into a world where family was merely blood. Does she know how proud I am she was created with the courage to unlearn all their hatred? These were some of the most gut-punching and beautiful lines on the record, and I think Olivia picked the perfect song to end on. Overall, I was very surprised by Olivia Rodrigo's debut album and absolutely impressed by it. As I said, I was worried that this album would feel like a label-induced rush job to capitalize on some very popular singles, but no. Olivia Rodrigo crafts a very beautiful breakup album that's elevated by its delicate production, wonderful vocal performances, and raw, unfiltered writing. In a way, I feel like this album perfectly encapsulates a lot of the feelings of heartbreak and breakups, and I think she's crafted a record that's going to feel very relatable to a lot of the Gen Z crowd. This idea of relatability can be polarizing in art because sometimes it feels like artists can try too hard to be relatable, but here Olivia just makes something that I think a lot of young people can naturally cling to and understand. As a fellow young Gen Z person myself, this was a hard hitter, and for Olivia to be able to capture emotions in her writing as well as she does at 18, that's extremely impressive. And beyond that, the music just sounds amazing too. If this is what she does on her debut album, I could tell you she's got an incredible future ahead of her with the music. To me, she's already right up there with artists like Billie Eilish and Dua Lipa as some of the most exciting new pop artists in the game right now. And that's why on my rating scale, I'm definitely going to give Olivia Rodrigo's Sour an excellent rating. Really enjoyed this album. Olivia did a fantastic job with it. I'm very excited to see where she goes in the future, and I highly recommend that you guys give it a listen. I think she's definitely got something special with her music. Now, let's finish things up by talking about the new 21 Pilots album, Scaled and Icy. This is the 6th studio album from the famed Ohio music duo 21 Pilots, and it comes on the heels of their last studio album, Trench, which released back in 2018. I reviewed that album on my blog about a month after it came out. You can find that at the link in the description, and it was probably one of my biggest surprise albums of 2018. I was very late to get to it, much like many albums I reviewed in my late 2018 blitz, but I was ashamed that it took me so long to get to it because it was fantastic. Beyond its infectious and excellent production and vocal work from Tyler Joseph, I was very impressed by how well the album handled its concept. And I thought the storytelling of the fictional world of Dima was pretty fascinating. I hadn't really been a 21 Pilots fan prior to that record, but I really loved the album and I was very interested to see where they would go next. Now they're finally back with a new album, one that is significantly shorter than Trench. After that album's nearly hour-long length, Scaled and Icy is just 11 tracks and 37 minutes. Which I don't have a problem with, but there's always the worry that the brevity is going to leave the record feeling unfulfilling. And while that brevity isn't my biggest problem here, I will definitely say that this album didn't live up to the high standard of Trench. One of the big things that's already polarized listeners of this album is how much brighter it is than Trench. The mood of the album is a lot more playful and upbeat than what was on Trench. I've seen a lot of people saying that this is because the album represents Dima mind controlling the artists to make something more colorful, and the marketing behind the album would also suggest that. Again, as someone that's not super deep into the lore of the band, this is just what I've gathered. And while that very well may be the case, I don't think the album totally goes deep into the Dima story, at least not overtly. A lot of the writing does have some dark edges hidden behind it, as you would reasonably expect, but for the most part, that's counteracted with very happy musical passages that feel very light. Personally, I'm not against the idea of the group trying something new like that, and in a lot of ways I respect it. A lot of artists in the music world always get asked to go back to their old sound, and it feels like some people don't want artists to grow or try new things. They just want them to stay in their comfort zone. To wit, I respect them for taking on a new direction, and I actually encourage it. The problem isn't so much that the group goes in a new direction, though. It's rather that this new direction creates some very mixed results. Not every track feels like it works in service to the new direction, making this a very inconsistent listen. In terms of the tracks that work in this new direction, Good Day works thanks to its fun, light piano riffs and the very charismatic vocal performance from Tyler Joseph, which nicely counteract these dark, sad lyrics about losing a job, wife, and child. Shy Away is also this clever electronic track whose instrumental almost reminds me of the DuckTales theme song, and Tyler sells the song with a super catchy hook that's hard to ignore. I also love the poppy vibes and bright electric guitars on a track like Saturday, and even if Tyler's vocals are auto-tuned, I think that works in service to the song, making it feel like a fun vibe that sounds like something of a summer jam. While those tracks are highlights, a lot of the other bright cuts don't work quite as well for me, and I feel like part of the reason why is because the hooks are not nearly as interesting. One of the elements of Trench that made it so great was the innumerable amount of catchy choruses on tracks like Jumpsuit, Chlorine, and Nico and the Niners, for example. Here though, I feel like a lot of the choruses fail to grab me, and it's a shame. Choker, I think, sort of wastes an unbelievably catchy beat and some beautiful Tyler Joseph vocals that remind me a bit of Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, on what is a bit of an underwhelming chorus. Similar thing with The Outside. The instrumental is so bouncy and fun, but the chorus just unfortunately does nothing to grab me. The album's middle stretch also does little to nothing for me. Never Take It feels like a road that leads to nowhere that wastes a little too much time, and Mulberry Street squanders an airy instrumental on a hook that goes in one ear and out the other. Formidable has a lot of good lyrical intentions, with Tyler penning some heartfelt words to fellow bandmate Josh Dunn, but again, despite the nice bright instrumental, there's not much about it that really hooks me in. Bounce Man also really tries with a somewhat danceable instrumental, but the chorus is so clumsy that it loses me a bit. The last two tracks on the record, No Chances and Redecorate, are much darker than the rest of the album, almost feeling like they return to the sounds of Trench. In a way, if the change in sound is really the group being controlled by Dima, these two closing tracks almost feel like the group getting past that control, and I feel like they are the two strongest tracks here. No Chances has a much deeper emotional edge to it than a lot of what else is on the album, and it does a much better job of hooking than a lot of what else is here. Meanwhile, Redecorate feels a bit more glitchy and off-kilter than the previous tracks, with a bit of an ethereal, hazy vibe as well. The chorus is much catchier than the other songs here, and both of these tracks also see Tyler in top form switching between singing and rapping. As great as those tracks are though, I'm kinda sad that this change in tone comes so late in the album. So many of the brighter songs feel like filler compared to these, and it feels like a transition like this should have come in sooner. So overall, it pains me to say it, but this new 21 Pilots album is a bit of a disappointment. It's not bad, and once again, I'm not opposed to the group trying something new and going with a different sound. In fact, I kinda welcome it. Too many musicians seem too content to stay in their comfort zone and make the same song and album over and over again, so it's nice when you see a big change. The problem is that the change in sound doesn't work quite as well as it should. While the production is definitely decent throughout and Tyler maintains his great vocals, many of these tracks just lack strong hooks, making them a little less interesting in comparison. I get that a lot of people might believe this new sound is adding to the Dima storyline, and maybe it does, but judging them as purely standalone listens, they're just not as interesting as they could be. The album gets interesting when it starts to shed away the sheen, the essence, and the veneer of positivity. It's just a shame that happens too late in the record for it to make a big enough impact. I'm sorry, I wanted to love this thing, but I just didn't. And on my rating scale, 21 Pilots is scaled in icy, would probably just get an okay rating from me. Definitely not bad, there are some good things going on, and I appreciate the new concept, but I just wish the album hooked more than it did. I do still recommend checking it out because I know this album is going to be pretty polarizing, so I definitely say give it a listen to see which side of the fence you sit on. So yeah, that's this week's new albums. One surprise and one disappointment. That'll happen, I guess. Either way, that's just my opinion on these albums. What did you guys think about them? Did you love them, hate them, were you completely indifferent towards them? Which one did you like more? Which one did you like less? Whatever your thoughts and opinions are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. In terms of what's next, I don't know who's dropping soon, and again, my output might slow a little bit until I can get this whole sickness figured out. Again, I'll try to have some 10 years later videos out for you guys while that's happening, if I feel well enough to do it. And I'm pretty sure I heard in terms of new albums that Maroon 5 and Migos are dropping in June. Those are two albums that are sure to be pretty big, so I will check them out. So stay tuned for those, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.